Linda mentioned being solutions oriented, and that's actually one of the main things I kind of want to drive into, and it's actually on the sheet here of how I think about being solutions oriented. But so I'll get into that in a minute. But one of the topics I kind of want to start out with tonight is kind of as a main point. What I'm going to try to drive home is the way to really think and come up with a great business and a business plan is to use circular logic. All right, and oftentimes in business you hear that when you're trying to create an argument, you hear that circular logic, it reconnects itself and you're talking yourself in a circle, and it's not a good thing. I'm going to take that and make the claim that yes, circular logic isn't great when you're trying to when you're just trying to create an argument, but when you're trying to refine a business, what using circular logic does is you're chasing your tail. And when you start with a point and you kind of run all the way around the cycle that we're going to talk, and you get back to the beginning, you want to keep running that thing around the circuit, okay? And if you take that mind frame and realize that coming up with a great business plan and a great pitch is a never-ending cycle, which means you don't create it and it's done. It's you created it and great, you've gotten another thing that now you can improve and improve and improve and improve. So that's really the mentality that I kind of take on creating some of these assets, and how do you do it in a stepwise fashion where you don't have to invest all the effort to come up with the perfect pitch and the perfect business model? How do you make that a very incremental based process so that you can invest only what you need to today to get to the next step, and then invest only what you need to do to get to the next step? So that's kind of the logic that I'm using on a bunch of these areas. Fair? At least so you know you can agree or disagree on the philosophy, but that's what I take. So I want to identify the chunks or the steps that go into a great business plan or pitch, and this is really what I have identified as working for me. The other one that you may want to look at, and I know from like Million Cups, you guys may have not. Well, you've been there a bunch. You probably heard this a bunch, but the Guy Kawasaki slides. If you Google Guy Kawasaki slides, like it's the first link, that comes up a lot as well. I've got a slightly different model on what I think works in today's climate, but that's certainly a good pitch deck to look at as well if you want to see some other examples. Anyway, I just wanted to mention before I kind of got into this. But so the main steps that I see are: one, your solution. All right. Two are your strategies. And three are your financials. Those are the three chunks. All right. Now each one of these has kind of sub-chunks, but that's what makes up a great business model. What's your solution? How are you going to make it happen? Can it happen? All right. So when we talk about solution, this gets broken down. It's what this piece of paper kind of identifies. It gets broken down really into three chunks. Three pieces that feed into that solution. Really what we're talking about is a problem, a customer, and a market. And this creates a circle. Out of that circle, when you run that logic around and around and around and around, that out of this should pop your solution. All right, so this article that I gave you describes what I call solution second thinking. A lot of people are solutions first. You come up with an idea, and I think about that idea a lot, and then I basically try to fit these things, my idea. I try to fit my idea in, or I try to construct a problem in a market and a customer to validate my idea. That is opposite of what you should be doing. Whether your idea is right for the market or not, the market needs to decide that. You can't force feed the best solution in the world into a marketplace. It really needs to connect all these pieces. So, when you're identifying a problem, you get kind of what you think a problem is, and then you think about, okay, who's the customer? Who's going to buy that? Then you think, all right, well, what is the market size? What is the addressable, relevant market that I can go? Well, then go talk to those people about the problem. Be like, this is a problem I've identified. Like, well, do you guys think it's a problem? And keep running that around. And what you'll notice is you run it around the first time you come up with a solution, you go talk to those people. It's not quite right. You run it around again, that problem will get tweaked. And what you end up doing is you take this straight line behavior of your solution and it kind of ends up bending. And you end up often in a very different place than where you started. For education evolution, the problem that I was trying to address was essentially a market problem. Sorry, I'm just looking for something that I can show you. Was essentially a market problem of, for various segments of products, being able to market and collect customer information and do remarketing is very difficult. If you're a web company, not very. Maybe it's not that it's not very hard, but you're set up for that. That's how it works. You get them to your website, and you get their information, and you're done. If you've got a physical goods company, that's really hard. You gotta do all sorts of tricks to kind of get that information. So I created kind of a digital roulette card that was aimed at information capture in a physical world or for physical companies. When I went out and tried to sell this, the market, they loved the product, but what I realized is I couldn't justify the cost to get to my customer. I had this product that I could sell, but I couldn't justify, and people liked it, but I couldn't justify the amount of effort that it took for me to sell that product to my customer. So the amount of profit I was getting off this product didn't make any sense for me to go and find it. So I didn't have, the customer that I identified was never going to be my customer because I couldn't actually afford the effort to go out and find them. So education evolution is a little bit of a pivot on this idea of how do we get people to come to us so that we can sell forward to them. Now, I'm not selling anything to you tonight, but the goal of my company eventually is to sell advertisement and be able to provide an avenue for other companies to come in and pitch products in a manner that financially makes sense. So that's kind of the first cycle that you kind of run around. Is that any questions kind of on that? I'll get into a few more detail. I am kind of going, just so you're aware, I am going a little bit high level. We do kind of other courses diving in to a lot more detail on those. I will get into a little bit more, but what do you got?
I understand. You're coming up with on the market with a problem, and then you ask your potential customer, you try to identify your customers, and then asking them the problem. Like, you recognize this as a problem or so, and then you identify the market, the customers are there, and then the circle.
Yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily doing these, you don't have to do this order. What it's saying is, get this set. Think about this, and don't think about your solution. Think about what's the problem you're solving for your customer in a market. Get that set, and then be like, okay, and this is the solution for it. Okay, so you get that set. Then go talk to people. Go talk to them early, real early. And go, hey, this is what I'm thinking. Is it going to work? Is it not? What problems do you see? And your solution will break, which is good. So then you'll identify, either my customer wasn't right, my market wasn't right, the problem I'm solving wasn't right, something's not right. So you'll tweak that, and what you'll realize is when you tweak that, that's what breaks your solution. If your problem isn't quite right and you tweak it, well, now my solution doesn't make any sense. All right, so I call these the big three. These three items, because those are what drive the solution, not the other way around. So you just use it as a tweaking mechanism. So for example, I'm doing some consulting with a guy that identified, hey, restaurants have a lull in like the middle of the day. So he came up with a reverse surge model, like Uber surges, but opposite. So you offer discounts at reverse times. Cool, great idea. Well, what the next thing he started doing was he built an app. He spent $5,500 building an app, and he showed it to me. I'm like, okay, great. What does it do? He's like, oh, not much. He's like, but I think it's enough to sell. I think it's enough to get somebody on board. Okay. I'm like, can it do this and this and this? Can you actually run like this thing that you're saying you can do? No, I can't do that. Okay, well, what are you planning on doing at the app? Well, not much. Okay. Well, it's enough, you can put up a screenshot and you can kind of show a customer what something might eventually look like. Cool. Great. So you've got something you can show the customer, but how do we get the process started to actually see whether this is relevant? Well, don't worry about your solution. Go into that restaurant and say, hey, I'd like to offer reverse surge on your restaurant. I'm willing to do the work and hand out the paper-based coupons and try to drive drive customers into your restaurant. Can you ask a restaurant, if I did that and you collected them, will you give me the data? So we took, instead of spending $5,500, he could have basically done a paper-based solution, and maybe had to do like a little app mock-up to be like, this is what we want to look like. It wants to look like in the future. But the solution he was working on was one for a business that was way, way, way far out. The market that he identified wasn't the market of today. It was the market of what he wanted his business to be 10 years from now. So depending on where your company is at, these items shift. If you're a startup that has 0 customers, like your goal is to find 1 customer. And then you can, when it comes to stages of a company and a growth model, if you want to build out, hey, what do my financials look like into the future? Cool. Run this at, what does your company look like in 2 years and 3 years and 4 years? But if you're a startup at day 1, like your goal is to get 1 customer. So don't be focusing on a solution for a customer set that you haven't even addressed yet, because the amount of cash that you're going to be spending won't warrant what you're going to get out of it. Okay? All right, so that's kind of the solution piece. The strategies, these are things like your sales strategy, marketing, go to market, competitive analysis. It's all things that are kind of supporting your solution. All right, so great, you've got your kind of big 3, and you've got your solution that came out of it. How are you going to put it in play? How are you going to get to that customer? Are you going to hire a fleet of people? Are you going to run social media ads? What are you strategically, what are the strategic triggers that you're going to pull to put that in play? All right, and this, I don't really have a cycle on these. These are just, I'll show you how these kind of link up, but these are kind of a little bit more company dependent. So what you end up doing here, sorry, I'm kind of thinking through this as I go. So how this and these 3 are related is really these three form another circle, and really what your business plan So your business plan ends up being a circle around your solution, your strategies, and your financials. And so you kind of run the same thing around, right? So you've got You got your solutions second thinking here that you're providing your solution. That plugs into here. Then you get your strategies together. All right, cool. Now we're going to pull our financials together based on those strategies. So I got my sales, marketing, my go-to-market strategy. What is all that cost going to look like? Based on the solution I came from, what is my revenue model going to look like? Cool, that plugs into my financials. Run that around. Does that actually create the business plan that you think is going to work, or does something need to tweak? And as you run that around and refine it, each one of these pieces will kind of refine on the next.
Just have a question. When you say go to market, like marketing, what are you thinking about? Like, do you have examples of go to market? What do you mean by go to market?
Sure. So again, this is different depending on the stage of your company, or whether you're expanding or whether you're a brand new startup. It's different.
Yeah,
So
that is a generic.
fair. So go-to-market strategy is I think the best way that I've realized on how to think of go-to-market strategy is how do I externalize, what is the path that allows me to externalize as many costs as I can from my business? I want my business to be so focused that everything else that I'm not doing gets externalized. And what is the avenue that allows me to make that happen? So, for instance, for Education Evolution, we've tried several different go-to-market strategies. One is a meetup group. One is talking to chambers of commerce. One is talking to the SBA. One was selling content to private businesses. Okay, so we've got several different ways that we can take this business. Right, we're a content creation company. We want to address and go to the market. So when we look at those, and I go out and I talk to every single person, not once, multiple times, test trial stuff. You need to be, like in every single step, you need to be talking to people. This isn't just something you generate in your head. You generate it in your head, and as you're running these circles, you're talking to people about what you're doing. And what I found was when I went and talked to the SBA and I said, hey, here's what I'm doing. This is what I'm putting together. They immediately grabbed on and they were like, great, we love what you're doing. Like we're gonna support the effort. And so what they did is they cleared all the way out. They cleared everything out in front of me. So I didn't have to worry about I didn't have to worry about all the marketing associated with getting people in the seats. I didn't have to worry about the capital costs of getting stuff printed. And so that's where I'll go, because it's the cheapest path for my business to do what I want to do what I want to do. So, the go-to-market strategy that's my go-to-market strategy. Another go-to-market strategy may be like Uber of, hey, we're going to raise $1 billion and we're going to create a walled garden. That's another go-to-market strategy. So, these things inform each other. The way you want to think about a go-to-market strategy is what do you want to accomplish? How and what do you have the means to accomplish? And what is the easiest way to do that? Think about when you think about what were we talking? What was the last one we did when we were talking about? We're talking about how do you kind of design a talking about like how do you figure out like how big, like what scale should your business be? Like what should your supply chain of your business be? Where do you start? Where do you end? You get what I'm saying? Like what is the scope my business needs to take on? Well, my opinion is like when I think about my business is what I really want in life is I want to lay in bed and have someone pay me. Like that's what I want my business to be. How can I do that? Oh, and you won't pay me for that? Okay. I'll get out of bed and I'll put underwear on. Will you pay me for that? No? Okay. What? And then what is the next tiniest incremental step that I can do to tell someone will pay me? And then I'm going to stop. Why would I add anything else if you're willing to pay me, for that? And then once I've got that, and okay, well, I need to grow my business, cool, I can take on a little bit more. But when you focus these things down, so you want to focus your business down, you want to focus your route to market down, you want to externalize everything from your business, these things get very streamlined, and addressing the market becomes easier, or at least it's a little clearer. Instead of this is you guys probably saw this yesterday. Not everybody's your customer, which means your product is not going to be right for everybody. That's good. If some people hate your product, great. Don't talk to them anymore. You know what I mean? Or don't talk to them from a I'm trying to land the sale perspective. So as you focus these things down, coming up with a go-to-market strategy becomes clearer because you're getting more narrow, and because you're like, I don't want to do all that work. Who will do that work for me? How do I tweak my product or my solution so that the people that will do that work for me are willing to do it faster and put more into it? Because there are all sorts of people that are looking for solutions and willing to pay a lot for it. You just need to kind of find that line and tweak your business to make it happen. Is that helpful at least? I don't know if it answers it, but
Yeah, I know that there is not only like one answer, because I'm a business major, so I kind of do that kind of stuff. So I wanted to know your perspective, so you answer it.
sure. My perspective on business in general, that's my perspective on business in general. I want to do as little as possible and have someone pay me for it. And I think I'm worth it. So that's kind of what guides me. And I think it helps pull a lot of these things together. Are there any, like, just on the basic framework of that, you guys got any like overall questions, or am I saying something that sounds like often left field, or in general?
I mean, to me, it sounds like you want to start with the problem, it seems to me. And that's when they always say you want to find you don't want to find the vitamins, you want to find the painkillers. Vitamins, you don't have to solve the problem, It's not necessarily super vital. You want to find
Sure.
painkiller products or ideas.
Yep.
They have to have it.
Yep. Sorry, what were you gonna?
Yeah, kind of have a question is, how do you focus, okay, on the number of problems, select the problems that you want
Sure.
to attack, then look what are the customers that have that problem, and then define the market, or are you going, first look at the customers, see what pains they have, that defines the market.
Right.
Now you go to find the problem that requires a solution.
Sure. So I would argue that this is the hardest step. This is the single hardest thing to do, is identify a problem, and identify a problem concisely. I would argue if you're solving problems, you're actually not doing anything, because you should be solving problem. If you're solving multiple problems, you've got a big business. You need to solve a problem. Where do I have this? So this point is address problems rather than symptoms. Most of the time what we do is we address symptoms. What people tell us, what their problem is simply a symptom of the environment they're in. They don't really understand the core the core concept of the problem. I mean, it's like Henry Ford, saying if I asked people what they wanted, they would have told me faster horses, right? Their problem was that I want to get to that place faster, and I don't want to have to deal with this damn horse. But how the hell would anybody know that until somebody presents them a solution that does that? So understanding that most of what you hear is symptoms is very important. It is an entrepreneur's job to distill those symptoms into a problem. and I can't help you with that.
Okay.
But I will tell you, if you have problems, you haven't done it. It needs to coalesce into a very, very simple problem statement. And I mean like 3 to 4 word type problem statement. Otherwise it hasn't been distilled down enough. What I found really interesting about coming up with problem statements is a lot of times when I'm working on it, I feel like I'm getting really niche. But when I get a problem statement that lands, it broadens really big, and it becomes this thing of like, oh, are you having this problem? Are you having this? Like, everybody can answer yes to that. And I'm like, holy shit, like I just figured out that all these things, this is the root cause of the problem. So like I spending the majority of your time here, that's where I spend the majority. I mean, I spent at my last company, I basically spent 2 years working on this problem statement. I never actually got to it. I had to shut the company down before I ended up figuring this thing out. So this is very difficult to chase, and if you're kind of there, I would work on it. But again, that's a hard question to answer. But most things are symptoms. Take those symptoms, figure out what are the pieces that connect those symptoms together. Get that problem statement. Start talking to people about that problem statement. Don't hold it.
Can I add something?
Yeah, go ahead.
The company that Matt's talking about that we closed down is people weren't ready for the solution, and we were out there beating our head against the wall. So that was my opinion.
Yeah. So let me just correct the language a little bit. It's not that people weren't ready for the solution.
Okay.
It's they were right.
Right.
We created a solution that wasn't ready for them.
Right.
It's not their fault. The customer's right. If the customer's not going to buy it, we should pack our bags and go home. So they were correct. I think the reason we didn't have the right solution is because we never really identified what the root cause problem was.
Right.
Which
That's another 3 hours conversation. Chuck, are we answering what your goal is? Like,
Well, I mean,
is that helping you for your pitch?
yeah, I mean, I've gone through all this. It's just like, it's just good to hear different perspectives.
Okay.
Because I did follow, Kawasaki and another gentleman that I met a month ago, how to prepare my pitch deck and, sounds funny, but I'm like, now I'm at the stage that I'm recording myself at least once or twice a day and sending that recording to friends and colleagues and say, okay, what do you think? I'm at that stage. So it's good to hear your perspective and.
Yeah, so just when it comes to this is my business plan design. So this is how this is different than what Guy Kawasaki does.
No, high level is there because I've done the solution. I already know the problem. I actually started my presentation. Oh, by the way, do you do this,